This podcast can be found on Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube. Hello and welcome to the Paper Prototypes podcast. I'm your host Rex, and I'm here with three guests for once, which is going to be fun. I'm here with Holly, Quinn, and Jack. So why don't y'all tell me about what your roles are for the game, and then tell me a little bit about the game itself, which is going to be White Knuckle.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Holly. I am the lead developer for White Knuckle. I do programming, I do level design, I do art, I do some creatures, though Quinn does most of those. And I'll hand it off to Quinn.
Hi, I'm Quinn. I'm one of the artists here at Dark Machine Games. Like Holly said, I do a lot of creature work, but I also do some level design, some textures, just
And
whatever's
items.
really needed, and items. Oh yeah, if it moves, it's probably my groove. That's a good way to put it.
They're one of the best animators I know, frankly.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you. And then next up is Jack.
Yeah, I'm Jack. I did all of the game's sound and music. I also edit our trailers, and I contribute bits to the deep lore of the game. And I'm the reason why there's people staying up until 3 a.m. tearing their hair out trying to figure out where the game is taking place. So they can blame me for that for the most part.
Oh, trust me, I have questions about that one.
We will answer what we are legally able to, and by legally I mean what we want to share. Yeah, so White Knuckle is it's a weird game. So basically White Knuckle is a horror climbing roguelike where basically you use both of your hands independently, one with left click and one with right click, and you can grab onto handholds and slowly try to, and increasingly quickly, try to escape Substructure 17, the location, this sort of mysterious megastructure that the game is set within. We call it a speed climbing game, and it might not feel like that at first when you're just getting used to the controls, but trust me, once you start actually getting into it, you can schmoove.
Alrighty, and what was the initial concept behind making a roguelike climbing game?
Yeah.
Do any of y'all have like a background in rock climbing, or did you just throw a dart and went climbing? That's the mechanic we're rolling with.
That
Yes,
would
and
yeah. So that would be me. I was a late addition to this group. I came in because like all three of us have wanted to make a game before, but we've all kind of like tried and failed. At this time, like I came in, I was like, "Hey, I've been rock climbing. Let's make a rock climbing game." And then Jack threw in, "What if it's rock climbing horror?" And it just like went from there.
Yeah, so yeah, Quinn suggested we do a climbing game. Then it sort of evolved. Like we do a horror game where you're being chased, and then we had a lot of ideas, and we sort of narrowed it down. I put together a movement prototype, and it wasn't a roguelike at this point, at least not sort of conceptually. But I put together a movement prototype with the sort of current hand system that exists in the game. It was much rougher back then, of course. But our original idea was something a lot more pared back, a lot simpler, maybe something closer to like Devil Daggers, more of like a time attack kind of thing, like how long can you survive in a much simpler environment. But as we kind of built it out, it kept growing and growing until it became the monstrosity that it is today.
Alrighty, and so then, what was the inspiration to set the game inside the most interesting character, which is the megastructure itself? And also, why do you think it is that some people have a fascination with with megastructures? I've been seeing them crop up more and more with indie games.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons that we kind of went with it. Our original idea was actually set on like a cliff, and the idea is you're kind of climbing through these like cliff dwellings and things like that. But unfortunately, I have the terminal brain rot that is I love Half-Life and Portal and Rain World. And I was like, oh, it'd be kind of fun if you're climbing through this big industrial environment. And like all three of us really like the sort of like dark industrial vibes in a lot of games. We love like a weird liminal Gary's mod map. And it all kind of coalesced into the superstructure and the substructure that you're inside of the game. As for like, I think why people enjoy those sorts of things, because there is a big renaissance in superstructure, megastructure games, so many different ones, and I think it's just there is something really foreboding about it, right? Like something beyond human scale. It's almost sort of cosmic horror in a way because it's so vast. Like how can you even comprehend it? How is it even made?
I think one of my favorite literary themes, and like the game kind of touches on this, but megastructures definitely fall into this category, would be like Kafka-esque, where it's just like needless bureaucracy is so confusing it ends up in and of itself becoming absurd, which I've always thought was fascinating. And you can hear that a lot through just the announcements of like how the day-to-day of this substructure was supposed to exist. Which I always found, I was like, oh, this would be a nightmare to live here, and that's before the ooze comes into question.
Absolutely, and that was, and I think all of us can kind of attest to that. Like, we really want, we really enjoy the idea of this sort of mundane world, sort of connecting or being intersected with this sort of fantastical world, right? That is the tone of a lot of modern, like, new weird genre stuff. You look at things like House of Leaves, and a lot about like Annihilation, and there's this sort of mix of like the modern world and all of its trappings, and how that kind of intersects and smashes into the weirder side of the world, and it creates an interesting narrative beat, in my opinion.
And then, do any of you happen to have examples of your favorite brutalist or megastructure inspirations from real life?
I bet these freaks do.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like real life structures, I would probably point towards it's like that crazy apartment building in Canada that I've referred to like every other month while we've been working on this game.
Oh, is that the one that has all the weird housing?
It looks like a Gary's Mod map, but it's but it's a real place that actual people live in.
Yeah.
It's Habitat something. I don't remember the exact number for it. I'll dig around for it in a second, but yeah, like just structures like that. Oh, actually, maybe a less memey example would be I think it's in Mexico City. There's like a college for the arts in Mexico City.
Oh my goodness, I know what
Something
you're talking
like that.
about. I've been
Yeah.
there. Yeah. I know the
Yeah,
place.
it's a really beautiful structure, and I'm really a fan of just how people blend you know, like really neutral tones like just concrete and stuff like that, and then incorporate, you know, plants and other organic material into their design. I think that campus is like a really striking example of that. Yeah, I think that would be like close to my main one. Like before I just start telling you about like Control and, you know, Gary's Mod maps and stuff like that. Yeah, that'd be my answer.
My personal favorite, and something that I've drawn from for a couple of the structures in White Knuckle, is the Salem Public Library. I think it just has a really classy look with the big panels. You have those little like bolt points, the big windows. I don't know. There's something about it that's classic, timeless. I'm so glad it was saved.
And so you get a lot of inspiration from real life, and I'm hearing a lot of Gary's Mod and Half-Life and that kind of stuff. I did immediately think Gary's Mod when I saw those the turrets that you knock over. But another thing that really drew me into the game was I kind of have an obsession with like a 1-bit art style. And so just the crushed textures, giving everything like this grimy industrial look, the muted color tones, but then also your hands switching from like the bright white to like this dark deep red. How did you end up discovering like the art style overall you wanted to go for White Knuckle?
You know, it's funny you mentioned 1-bit, because have you played The Return of the Obra Dinn? It's one of the Jack Pope's games.
I haven't, but I'm familiar with a lot of his work.
Yeah, so early on, like the first concept for the visual style of White Knuckle was going to be strictly like, it was essentially going to be 3 colors. It was going to be like white, black, and then a red, and then like nothing else, sort of emulating that like dithered 1-bit style of Return of the Obra Dinn, which is a beautiful game, and it sort of matches this older like look of like old Macintosh systems and things like that. And so we wanted to do that, but we realized in motion in our early experiments that it was so unreadable when you're trying to speed through a level and like grab handholds, and like it was like simpler back then. And I was like, nah, we can't do this. So we kind of expanded the palette. We kept the first region being this kind of like only grays and then blotches of red to kind of bring like interesting sort of visuals. But we kept like the dithered look from that old day, and it kind of like came together because it really is like we pull a lot from Half-Life 1 and Portal and things like that. But then mixing it, making it a bit grimier, and then also like making sure that we stick to our limited palette as much as possible, even in like later areas, which sort of change the palette. Like Pipeworks has like greens and browns, but it's still like you're like hanging on one side of the palette. You're not like exploring the entire spectrum of color. But I think it adds a lot to the readability of the game, because you always know like where you need to grab, because there's, it stands out in some way. But it also makes it really, I think, unique.
Another thing that stands out to me for Substructure 17 is you combine that art style in the gameplay and the way that the levels are designed. It does not feel that it was made for you, that you are basically just someone that is scavenging through something that is broken down and does not care about you in the slightest. So how do you design a world that is borderline, like, hates you when the player plays through it?
Yeah, so I think a big part of it, and I think it's something that really works very, very well when you're depicting like megastructures in media, is you kind of go abstract with it a bit. Like a lot of the locations in White Knuckle are very abstracted. Like they look like they could be real spaces, but they're a little absurdist. They're a little weird. And that makes them feel more hostile. And it makes it feel like when you're clambering through them, that there is this sense that like you are not meant to be here. This is clearly not meant for people. What are you doing in this weird, absurd space?
And then how do you end up designing the levels so that way players can actually play through them? Because every single time I see a new zone, it's all just me thinking about how there's a way to get through this where I don't need to use my items. But it's hidden in a way that you need to think about. And one of the best ways I've seen that the level design was laid out was that it's more like a puzzle as you're trying to climb than it is necessarily just straight rock climbing.
Yeah, and that's a big design goal for us, because White Knuckle is a roguelike, right? You're replaying through areas. When you fully die, you go back to the beginning of the game, and so we wanted to have this balance, and so we decided to go with handcrafted levels, but just like a lot of them that get put into your game, that get shuffled in, and so we designed levels so that way they have multiple sort of tiers of like readability, right? On your first playthrough, you're going to go for the most obvious route. It's usually the least efficient one. You're going to use items, or you're going to be slower. It's a little more dangerous. But as you see that level again, you start to learn its quirks, its tricks, and you learn the quirks and tricks of the entire region that you're in, so you can read more levels that come with it a bit more easily. And eventually, because you have seen that level a couple of times, you start thinking about it like you would if you were like a speedrunner, where you're thinking about what is the most optimal route through this level, because I got to go fast. And so we designed levels with multiple tiers of like possible routes with increasing difficulty or increasing requirements, and also like increasing obscurity. That way it feels really, really special when you find it. I'm sure Quinn can answer a couple more things, because they just recently, I say recently, it's been a couple months now, started on doing some level design themselves. So maybe you have some insights being fresher to the experience.
Yeah, so much of what Holly said holds true about the three route structure, or not the three route, but the three tier. Have like my own personal rule that there has to be three, but there's something fun about overlapping these routes as well, where then you're giving players the choice of deciding, hey, this little chunk up ahead looks a little bit sketchy, but to the left there's this other one, and it's almost like designing for fun, and giving players more options seems to increase the amount of fun, or at least that's what I have found in my playtesting and my map design.
And then how do you communicate to other players what is something that's actually grabbable? I know you guys did the obvious thing about like, oh, the rebar that you throw and the handhelds are all red. But there are moments where just out of sheer desperation as I'm falling, I'm able to grab like a ledge and I'm like, wait a minute, I can grab this part of the wall that's coming off. And then I realize I can grab ducts and bridges and hand railings, and anything that juts out is almost grabbable.
Yeah, that's a really big thing for us because we want it. Like we have the handholds, and those are like usually for the main routes. But we want to also make sure that it's really the levels are really readable, so that way you can grab like, oh, there's an edge there. I can grab that if I can just get a little closer, or like, oh, I can leap and grab onto that vent that's hanging off. And so there's a couple of methods that we've used to kind of make it as readable as possible. One of them is that by design, we chose this very brutalist architecture, which means it's very like simple in a lot of ways, which means like you don't have a lot of like greebling that would make that more confusing. We try to keep it as readable as possible by just having whatever is jutting out really, really obvious. The other thing that we do is that, and this is more technical, when we are baking our levels, like all the levels have baked lighting, we really crank up this thing called ambient occlusion, which is like the shading that you get in like the corners and the divots. And the reason we do that, we crank it to unnatural levels because it really exaggerates when something is like poking out of a wall, which makes it so much more readable when you're just kind of like trying to quickly like glance at a space to see where you can climb.
So that's... Oh, sorry, continue.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just going to add, too, that was absolutely an early... that was a very intentional thing that we came up with early on, was the idea of being able to catch yourself as you're falling. Because we realized that there aren't very many games where there's kind of that opportunity to do something like that. I've seen some comparisons to White Knuckle that, like, as far as like it being sort of like a rage game or whatever, or it's like similar to that because you get a lot of other climbing games that are, quote unquote rage games. And we liked the idea of adding to the tension of the game of if you fall, that you can actually grab onto any random thing that's sticking out at you in your proximity, and let that stop your fall. We realized that was a really like kind of, for how simple it is, it's a really compelling idea to just sort of add on to like the ability to save yourself. Not only like prevents people from kind of getting freaked out and frustrated at the game as easily, it also kind of lets you process that, whoa, I almost died there kind of moment as well. Like it adds more to the tension, even if it's actually a life-saving mechanic.
Which is kind of interesting, because usually when I hear some of the best advice, or when people talk about some of the best horror games, I usually think of like Resident Evil. They lock the camera angle and reduce your ability to be an effective fighter. Partially because everything takes forever to kill, because the lack of control usually is what adds to horror. But in this as element, I guess giving you a little bit of control does add to the horror, almost like as the opposite of usually the advice I've been told.
Yeah, there's because we give the players like a huge amount of control in White Knuckle over where they're landing and everything. And the reason we do that is because it means we can ramp the tension even higher. Right, in other ways, and the player will feel it's still fair because they feel like they have control over the situation. But it gets fun, like as you said, when you're falling, and as Jack said, like when you're able to catch yourself in that like last moment before you fall and die into, I guess we haven't even said the like main threat of the game is this mass of human corpses that is like slowly encroaching higher and higher. But it always feels really, really stressful when you're just barely able to save yourself, and you have to like think super quick. How do I get out of this? How do I save myself? And that is a moment that I think everybody who plays the game experiences many, many times. And that's one of, I think, the most like we looked into. I'm not going to say like we designed. Oh, we're so we're so smart. We designed this. No, we looked into it, but it worked out being this really tense thing that everybody experiences, and it experiences in different ways. Which was very lucky.
So I guess
without going like too far off the path with this discussion too. The ability to like catch yourself too and retain like your control in the game was it was like an imperative early on that we kind of make sure that the player is able to actually play the game as frequently as possible. So even if you die, like restarting is a super fast process, and you're back to actually playing the game properly, really quickly, kind of no matter what happens. We think that it's another one of those situations that I think we did kind of luck into it. Like that was sort of a good guess early on for us, that making it so that way there's not a whole lot of downtime between like failing or like succeeding at a challenge. We're just kind of continuously moving you through the game. That's ended up working out really well in our favor with kind of keeping people engaged in it as they play just during any play session of the game.
So I would say that the rock climbing, or I keep calling it rock climbing because that's just instantly what I think of with the climbing, and navigating out of the substructure is one half of the gameplay. The other half is the horror element. So what is it to all of you that makes interesting horror, and how have you incorporated it into the game?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of stuff that we've put in. I think you could really split horror in like multiple ways, and how both like the environment feels and sort of its ambient level, this active level, which is like, oh, there is a threat that I have to deal with. And we wanted to kind of ease the player into the horror a bit, because climbing itself is already pretty tense, pretty scary. So like our first idea for or the first like major sort of horror encounter is not actually like that spooky, but it just adds to the tension. And so when we do add scarier and scarier things later on in the game, there is this nice like curve of progression. And we have a lot of inspirations for that, which I'm sure Jack and Quinn would also love to chat about.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, like I'm probably the biggest horror fan out of the three of us, I would say. I consistently play the most horror games, and they've influenced my work probably the strongest out of the three of us. I've told people every single day that I've been alive that Silent Hill is a giant inspiration just to me artistically. I resonated with those games just on a like kind of a mood level since I was like pretty young in high school. So yeah, it's influenced a lot of the sound design for the game. A lot of the ambient audio in the game is heavily inspired by scenes in those games where there's just kind of esoteric looping industrial noises or kind of other just unexplained sounds. It turns out that if you just have the right kind of environment and you throw a sound into an environment that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, um, people are more willing to engage with it, at least in my experience, are more willing to engage with it earnestly rather than saying, why is that sound happening? That doesn't make any sense. They go, what would be causing that? And being able to stir up someone's imagination like that is, it's a really powerful tool, and I really enjoy using it, especially in this game. Um, so yeah, that's kind of been like one of the main things in the game is the ambient horror for me is kind of more my favorite thing to work on, just making an environment feel more dreadful or isolating, or even like you kind of hinted at earlier, the superstructure is very like apathetic to the player overall. Like it's kind of operating completely independently of what the player is doing in it, in a sense, and contributing to that, I think it's been a really engaging part of working on the game for me.
When it comes to my stuff, it I'm probably out of the three developers here the least interested in horror. Like the horror quote unquote game that I've played the most and liked the most is probably Returnal, and that's where I draw a lot of my stuff. I draw a lot more from like New Weird, from House of Leaves, the SCP project. It's just the strange things that is what I really appreciate in a world like that's been talked about that doesn't really care for you, and doesn't really make sense. It's why me and Holly get along a lot when it comes to adding things to the game, because we both have this real interest in the absurd that can be found in horror. Like, I don't know, the house in Returnal is probably the spookiest thing that I've experienced in gaming, and it's just a house in the middle of an alien jungle planet. It's just, I don't know. It's hard to describe in words.
So When I first saw this game, I knew it was horror, but I didn't see a lot of clips. I just saw the overall, like, a lot of the climbing, and I figured something was gonna come and grab me. So I started playing the level when I got the key to do the interview, and the first time I fell, I thought, ah, fuck, I gotta get back up. And then I looked down and realized, oh, it's filling with water, so I guess I might drown. That's the horror. And then I took a deeper look and saw there were fucking faces floating all throughout, and then saw hands were coming up to grab me, and I thought, holy shit, I need to leave immediately. So, that's just one of, I guess I would say, the antagonists towards the player throughout the game. So how did you come up with the enemies that were going to basically harangue the player throughout?
Yeah, well, the mass, so like this sort of design, it changed a lot early on, but the mass was the first like major threat that eventually sort of became part of the game, and it was like, well, we want something that's really like for the early regions especially, it needed to be something that was really readable, that like, and also was something that was forgiving, and the mass is like, you might die instantly when you touch it, but you can always see it. If it's like near you, it's moving at a constant rate. You don't need to worry about it like lashing out or like trying to hide. It is this sort of constant threat that ramps the tension. And then we had a lot of other ideas for different creatures. Quinn, do you want to talk about teeth a little bit? Or, I'm not sure how far you've gotten, but the third region has another active threat, which is very fun.
Yeah, I can talk about Teeth. Teeth was going to, in like my original pitch for this climbing game was going to be the mass, but it came down to the mass was easier to implement, and it was, like Holly said, a clearer danger. We did end up like reusing him in this other environment where he works best. He's like this really dark, shadowy figure that he's in the Habitation's service shaft. Is that the name of the region?
Yeah.
Yeah, in her service shaft, where it's we stick you in a dark environment. You have to have a crank flashlight just to see, and you add his like really dark silhouette to that, and it makes for a really really engaging horror experience. I know we all had trepidations about his implementation until we like started actually getting playtesting him. When we were like, oh, this is totally a direction we want to go. We're really happy with this. How have you made it to the later game, like habitation areas, like the lab specifically?
So I suck, but I've seen a lot. I've had to do some research to get to view the bits that I was not able to get to on my own. But I'm familiar with the three enemies. There's I don't know their names, but there's the one that climbs the wall that you shoot the flares at with the flashlight. Is that Teeth, or is it the one where it's just a mouth? And I'm like,
yeah,
oh,
that's Teeth.
That's Teeth.
Teeth is the one that chases after you. It's like climbing on the walls. He like leaps from wall to wall. When he gets close to you, you get these like hand effect around your screen, and he's afraid of light. So he's like the more like quintessential like horror creature that is in White Knuckle, right? The mask is kind of unusual. But then Teeth is more like classic horror. And then we also have this creature called the Vent Thing, that is in fact its name. It is the thing that lives in the vents. And what it is it's this hand that kind of mimics your own, in the sense that like it will grab onto you, and then it has its own stamina. And you have to like hang on for your life and try to like keep your stamina up before it'll like finally let go because it's run out of strength. And then if it does get you, it'll pull you through the vents into its giant sort of chomping mouths.
So I think my favorite thing about the Vent Thing was it's red and white, which fits perfectly within the color scheme of what you guys have gone for the game. And so when it grabs you with its white hand, I'm thinking, oh, that's just like character design, fit the art style. And when it slowly changes red like the players, now there's like a readability factor that comes into the monster, so you can see it struggling just as much as you are struggling.
Yeah.
Whose idea was it to make it to where you can see the monster struggle almost the same way the player has the mechanics of the hand turning red as well? It's almost like he has an attribute of the player.
That was Holly in implementation. That's all Holly.
Yeah, I was I have for years before White Knuckle, I have had an idea for a creature that lives in the vents that like tries to grab the player, right? like something that was similar to venting. It wasn't quite, because the sort of mechanics of White Knuckle changed the design a bit. But when we're implementing it, like I was like, oh man, it'd be really cool if like when it grabbed you, because we're trying to figure out like, okay, what is the threat here? How do you deal with it? It's like, okay, it grabs you. That's kind of fun. We were like, maybe you just hit it with your hammer. And then we're like, well, it's big hand that like it kind of is like looks like the player if we make it like really pale, if we make it this sort of like pure like white hand. And so I realized like, oh my god, we can make it an analog for the player's hands, and that'll be like, players may not understand how it works immediately, but while they're hanging on for their life, they're gonna see it turn red, and then it'll like click for them that like, oh my god, this thing has the same stamina mechanic that like the rest of me has. And so it became this readability thing. It became this like cool like player analog thing, which habitation does with Teeth as well. Like Teeth is this climbing creature, and so it's like it really worked out.
So I imagine the mass is made up of other people that it's consumed, because all the faces, and when you die you get fused into, which also made me horrified, because my first thought was, am I still sentient when I fuse with that thing? I pray to God I'm not. But if the vent thing has the grabbing mechanics like exactly like the player, and Teeth like a monster climbs just like the player, does that mean that they are also people, or were they just monsters that got experimented on?
Yeah. So I will, some of the stuff that's already in the game alludes to the fact that Teeth was a human being at one point before something horrible happened to him. And the Ven thing hasn't been revealed to the broader community yet, but I will say it does. Well, the hands, let's say, were human hands at one point. Before something happened to them, because the whole idea in the region that they're in, this place called Habitation, is that they were doing all of this like research on these anomalous objects that they were pulling out of this sort of extra dimensional space, and they were trying to figure out what weird things can we do with this stuff? Can we sell them? Like whatever. And things went horribly wrong, and it led to things like Teeth. It led to things like the vent thing. It did not lead to the mass. The mass is separate, but it is also made of people. Everything is made of people.
How fun and quaint. And then, how do you make? I guess this would be a question directly for Jack. Did I get the name right? About the sound design. How do you make a monster sound almost like it's almost scared of the light and terrifying when it screams, but when the mass is rising up, and almost like something out of Dante's Divine Comedy, where I fall and the door seals above me, and the mass just rises very quickly. As it's rising and getting near, there's like noise, like ambient noises, to like heighten my fear, and that happens in other moments with the monsters, or even like how do you I guess how do you make the monsters scary through noises, I guess is the short form.
Yeah, it's certainly it's a balancing act with like pretty much with any game anyone's ever worked on, because there is a creative element where it's sort of, how do I want this thing to like, behave, how do I want to convey, emotions through it, if any, how do I want to sound texturally and all that stuff. But then there is also just the gameplay element, like how do I convey useful information to the player. And so the mass, for the really simple explanation for that one, was sort of like, I've seen it work in other games where people generally just appreciate having additional proximity warnings to threats through sound. Amnesia's done this, Silent Hill has done this. I'm sure there is an instance of this happening in Resident Evil. I haven't played all of them. I haven't seen every last thing yet. Just getting audio cues of something being lurking around at all is helpful, and it is also scary at the same time. So in the case of the mass, a lot of that is reused from older prototypes of ours, where it was like we should just put in like a low rhythmic thud, and then we should do like some other nastier higher pitched tones when it's when a enemy is in like proximity to you. So a lot of that, like those old the thudding noises that are like in the game now, if is sort of like that's the furthest audio cue that there is that it's within your vicinity, and I think that was from something that we worked on in like 2016. So that's like a decade old like effect that's in the game at this point. But yeah, so like that's like a more simple one, and then on the creative end, like by the time the mass is properly caught up to you and you're pretty well aware it's there, then we can kind of start leaning into more of the creative elements. Like, well, it's a bunch of faces in there, so maybe they're conscious, maybe they can feel things, who knows. So that was hey, let's just make it a whole bunch of weird goo noises, and it's layers and layers of me just making noise into a microphone just to get that crowd. I would like to probably do another take of it eventually where we can incorporate more people than just my voice, but no one has commented so far on how homogenous the vocal range of the mass seems to be. For something like Teeth, that one was a little bit more of a challenge, just because like finding unique ways to create a tone for a creature is just kind of its own task. And Quinn actually floated the idea of incorporating elk and deer noises into Teeth initially, and I kind of just went through my own mental back catalog of creature sounds, because I'm someone who will just go through like YouTube videos of just like name of game here, all creature sounds or whatever, just to see if someone's ripped all those files and upload them for people to hear. And going through my own mental catalog, I was like, I don't think I've heard like a deer screaming or an elk screaming is a pretty uniquely awful sound that I don't think I've heard anything else in games use. It's probably happened, but not that I'm aware of. So that was a pretty easy call to like throw that in there. I used elephant screeches too. So like when Teeth takes damage from being in proximity to flares, that whining sound is a baby elephant just whining. That's been pitched around. Yeah, so that was kind of that. It took a little bit of time to sort of figure out how to blend all that together. And what helped with Teeth too is that he had multiple mouths, so it was like he could have a whole weird range of tones just because he has, 2 points of like audio emission in his biology, was sort of how I interpreted that character. So that gave a lot of wiggle room to experiment with how he might sound.
Yeah, I'm always kind of surprised how horrifying just animal noises are. The first time I saw a video where a bunny screamed, I just thought, what the fuck is going on with that? And the first time my leopard gecko hissed at me because she didn't realize I was behind her when I picked her up. That was a fun day.
Oh, so cute. Love leopard geckos. They're adorable. Sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. I routinely will sometimes just go on YouTube and watch the babies because I guess they're born alone.
Oh my God.
So they just scream at everything. So they hatch, and for the first 3 days when you try to feed them,
screaming.
it's just nonstop.
I mean, same, honestly.
I mean, it's like me. Like
highly
every time I
relatable.
wake up, it's just like 3 hours of screaming until I eat.
Okay. Yeah, with everything that's going on with the gang, with Teeth grabbing you, there's a horror of falling into Teeth or him climbing up. There's a horror of falling into the mass. There's a horror of not having enough strength to survive the vent thing. So I think, was this a conscious decision, or was this just something that naturally came up, where the horror element is just the horror of failure? Because there are consequences. So every jump you make isn't just, damn, I'll fuck up like in Mario. It's, I'm going to die, and I'm going to have to restart. So there's that stress of failure, and already something that you're anxious about, and then you're projecting that directly onto the enemies, almost like as a perfect blend of like Ludo narrative. So is that something that was like something that came naturally through testing, or is that something you guys consciously made a decision in the planning for?
I think we definitely consciously made that decision. It also emerged naturally, even more so than I think we expected. But yeah, like so much of the game is you are, a decent ways into the run and knowing that like if I mess this up, I will have to go back, like maybe all the way to the beginning if I don't have any discs like saved, which adds so much tension, so much horror, and that's something like I don't generally, despite kind of making a game about climbing, like I think a lot of these games like I've kind of bounced off of, but with this one, I think it's like, well, we give so much opportunity for both getting really far and also for like failing, and we try to like, I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm a little lost here, but basically, yes is the answer. So much of it is intentional, and that tension I think is just a natural result of climbing in general, whether in the real world or in the game.
I can also speak to the intentionality of that a little bit, because of anecdote that I sort of like to use to compare how Holly and I design horror encounters, because we both very much like to do that. Holly doesn't, like I said, like I've played a lot more horror games, and in Holly's case, I think where we arrive at the same conclusion, but her approach is very much like, what's the funniest thing that could happen to someone in this moment? And I'm thinking, what's the scariest thing that could happen to someone in this moment? And we both go like, well, you could have like, I mean, a good example of this would be, we have a specific area where there are rotating, like huge rotating fans, and you can just get insta-gibbed as soon as you touch them if they're turned on. And there is one that will turn on and off on its own. I'm speaking specifically of one that is above you towards the end of a level, and you have to just time your climb up through it so it turns off and you just climb up through it. If you time that out wrong, you can just be under that fan. It turns on, it'll just suck you up into it, and that's the end of your run. And there's a lot of slapstick in that too, but that is also like a genuinely terrifying prospect of this piece of industrial equipment could turn on at any moment and blend you into a fine paste. Yeah, like it's two sides of the same coin with us with designing a lot of horror elements, because vent thing is equally terrifying. That sure, it's this seemingly disembodied hand that can just grab you and feed you into a big chomping mouth. But you could also describe it as this thing yoinks you and just pulls you through these vents, and that's equally funny as it is scary. So that kind of approach has worked out pretty well for us. Of like, we laugh quite a bit when we're designing horror elements, just because they are also just as funny as they are scary to us, basically.
The furthest I got, I had died, and then when I respawned, I realized, I can't just buy another save slot. That there are limited save slots. Okay, I gotta lock in, and my hands are sweating. I'm like, let's go do another run. I can make it through. I know how I fucked up. Immediately slipped in the elevator and died.
It's classic. Like that is a classic
Exactly.
white knuckle death, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
That was the furthest I ever got. I was so mad. I was like, we're done for the day. We're gonna.
You got this. Like, here's the thing, and this is what I tell people who like, or this is what I see when people like are playing the game, is that like the further you get, the better you get at getting further again, right? Like, if you get to Pipeworks, which is where you got to, like even once, you're gonna be able to get there again much sooner than it took you to get there in the first place, right? Like once you're getting to the third region habitation, you can clear silos easily, or pretty easily in like 5 minutes or 6 minutes or something, and then you're into Pipeworks, and then like there is such a learning curve, but I think one of the big parts of the reward experience of White Knuckle is feeling yourself actively improving.
The problem is that I watched the speedrunners, and I tried to adopt their tactics, and I saw that you didn't you didn't need to hammer the pittons in, because if you're fast enough, I was like, okay, I got this. Immediately the pittons slipped out of my hands and I fell in the mass, and I was like, all right, we're going
very funny.
going back to the old method. But I definitely, Yeah, no, I understand the idea that with horror there's almost like a comedy element to it, because I was thinking like, they're not going to let the doors slam on me when I make it to the next level, are they? And yeah, no, the door just slammed on me, and I'm like, well, I guess they just let me die that way. That's great. There's no hand-holding.
Yeah, yeah.
That's happened to all of the devs. That was a complete accident that we like didn't think that it would happen, but when we encountered it, we thought it was so funny we kept it. It was the most hilarious thing. I think we were all sitting in a chat when Holly found that out, and oh man, it was so good.
Very good.
Yeah, yeah. It's a really good clinch moment too, because you've got just these giant, scissor-like doors that, they very loudly shriek as they close in. They have a little alarm that sounds right before they shut and everything. It's like, clear this thing because it's just gonna cut you in half if you're hanging around in it. Yeah, no, I mean stuff like that. It's like, I think it helps speak to that sort of like uncaring feeling of the entire superstructure that we hinted at earlier, where it's just like, it's like, well, what were you expecting from just climbing around in a bunch of industrial machinery all day? It's like you might get hurt doing it.
It's just more proof that the world ain't built for you on this one. So,
Exactly.
I do think your fans will kill me if I don't touch up on the lore a little bit.
They do like the lore.
One thing I'm obsessed with is retrofuturism. I love the aesthetic. I love old 80s chunky computers. I bought a Casio because I just think they look really cool. I have like some cassette tapes because I just think they're neat. What was the decision for the retrofuturism? Because when I booted into a computer, using a floppy drive, I got hit with OS 1995, and I thought, oh, okay, so we're going like old school. But then I saw there was a note that was from 2033 or something like that, and I'm like, what is happening? This is everywhere.
Yeah, so I think all of us, me and Quinn especially, love retrofuturism. We love any sort of game that has, especially like I love any sort of game that has like some computer system from the 90s. We love Fallout, all that sort of side of things, right? There's a huge gulf of sort of concepts and ideas that are really interesting. And yeah, we went with it. It's like narratively, there is this concept that at some point in the 80s, some big like tech monopolies formed in the universe of White Knuckle, and then they kind of stagnated the technology they were developing, and then B, the world went to shit, and so people weren't making like any new stuff. So in the sort of narrative of White Knuckle, the whole facility is like sealed at some point in the early 2000s, and everything that you're using up until like the mid 2030s is just what they can keep going, And I'm sure if Quinn, you want to talk about some of your retro future stuff, especially for habitation. By all
Of
means.
course. So my background with this is that like my family historically sold these like old mainframe equipment. Like my grandfather brought the first mainframe computer down to Mexico. So there was like growing up, there's been a lot of like vacuum tubes around, a lot of these old, what are they called? They're like, because there's the master system and then there's the slave/console. I forget the strict terminology, but like they've been everywhere. So many of my projects have been based around like those shitty old beige PCs. I just love the look so much. It folds in a little bit to like my professional work. For I've worked alongside a lot of old decrepit systems that have just never been updated because, well, they work now, so why should we update? So it has a little bit of that feeling. The substructure authority is almost like a quasi-governmental entity where it's like that has that attitude of like, well, if it's not broken, we ain't gonna update. So then it just never gets updated.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the TV industry before it collapsed in the United States, where basically, definitely understand the joys of that. Especially because I do a lot of computer repair as well, so I see a lot of like Apple products, and I'm like, who built you? Why are you designed in such a shitty ass way? Another thing I caught wind of is that when I first started playing and I died the first time, I got hit with all the stats. And I saw there was a crime stat. And I'm thinking, like, what item am I going to use? Like, is there going to be, like, a heroin item and that's criminalized? But no, it's, you get a grub, which, first of all, I hate insects, but that thing is cute. And then I saw the guy pop it, and it made a squelch noise. And I was horrified by the noises it made. And then so I love the fact that the get out of jail free card is a crime. But when I'm thinking it's a crime, because I saw the lore where there's something about, like, it's either good or you were supposed to kill them all. Is it a crime against existence and humanity that they're propped, or is it a crime against the substructure that it's... Because there are different implications as to what that is a crime against.
Yeah. So what I will say about why that is criminal behavior is firstly because why would you hurt such a cute, precious little creature? I mean... That's clearly criminal to do such a thing. In universe, what I will say is that the old authority that used to manage the megastructure before everything went to hell and, you know, everyone seems to be dead, they also made it an official crime because they were worried about, how do I phrase this? They were worried about something getting very mad that humans were killing its offspring.
Okay, so there are implications to why killing this thing is a crime.
Yes, there are implications, and it'll be something. I will say later on there is a region we have planned, which the current name we have for it is the Nest. This has been sort of discussed in the Discord a bit. So one of the future regions is this place called the Nest, and more information about the grubs and what specifically is happening with that side of things will be sort of revealed there.
Just for the sake of throwing in one behind the scenes bit for this too, the crimes committed part was
your
put
idea,
into the
right,
game.
Jack?
It may have been. I honestly don't remember because we were all we were having one of our nights where we were all having one of our late summer nights where we just kind of scream it at each other in a Discord call about what the best thing to put in the game is. When I say scream, I don't mean fight. Like, we're all just howling with laughter at the idea of throwing different things into the game. So the idea of just, like, without any context, just telling people, hey, you've committed a crime, without telling them exactly what they did wrong, and tying it to the grub, we came up with all of that first, and then we added all of the lore implications for that way afterwards. Yeah, because we just liked the idea of just making, you know, little parts of the game just feel unhinged like that. Like, what if there's just a crime counter in your score stats? So, yeah.
I mean, that is dystopian, the idea of you're just walking around and suddenly crime has been committed. And it's like, what the fuck did I do? Like, what happened to habeas corpus, guys? Let me know.
No, you did a crime. I'm sorry, but we're going to have to turn you in.
We won't tell you what it was or what you did, but...
Exactly. But yeah, also, like, it adds to the atmosphere, because there's so much in the game that is very mysterious. Even, like, the items, we don't tell the players specifically what they do. And I think it adds to this sort of atmosphere of, like, mistrust and confusion, which is such a big part of the White Knuckle sort of vibe.
So there's lots of implications around insects, because I know the money system is also bugs. But then there's also the upgrade system is like this experimental piece of shit that may or not make your life harder, or the fact that when you come back, it tells you not to listen to the voices. So, but the one that
you don't want to listen to the voices. That's a bad idea.
It was that, as well as your character, I forget where, but it said the idea that, like, you've experienced this before when you logged your save in. But also, the thing that gets me is that you recently, in the tutorial, you become the new maintenance worker, but you've experienced some of these things before. So are you actually a new maintenance worker, or have you been running in this loop for a while?
No comment. This is something what I will say, because we have a lot of internal stuff planned relating to this. is that we don't necessarily want to spoil it yet, because it's our intention is that a lot more of this will be revealed in the final 1.0 release once we exit out of early access. We're kind of holding some stuff back, various aspects of the narrative until that point. But yes, the answer is the answer may surprise you.
So
Yeah, we do have a lot of it figured out already. Like there's a lot of people just kind of trying to pick at what may or may not be some of those answers, and we've spent extensive time planning out exactly how we want this to go for quite a while now. So we definitely have answers for everything, but we're just not going to tell anybody.
So that was my next question, actually. So there is a definitive plan. Is not telling players what the definitive lore is that done because you want players to piece it together, or is it done because you want players to all have their own different interpretations of what's going on?
Yes to both of those. I so much of the, I mean, like literally, like it's like there is a lot of fun to be had in piecing together disparate pieces of lore. That's what, like, you know, Dark Souls does. A lot of narratives do it, and a lot of the stuff that we're interested in do it. Like, I really love. We've talked about New Weird already. So much of like New Weird or like cosmic horror, like Lovecraft, is like you get like snippets, you get little pieces, and you can kind of piece it together. But also a lot of it is like your what you think it might be. You know, like if you talk to someone else about various things, and what I hope happens when people talk about White Knuckle is they have their own ideas of like what is going on, and those ideas might differ, but they're all like they're kind of valid in some ways. I think that's wonderful.
And then has there been anything that you're excited for players to find but they haven't found yet?
When we launched early access, there is this big secret called Salt Sea Light, or Sight Sea Light, which basically requires the player to do a couple of like obscure things, and then die, and then they get to the special area, and stuff like that. I really love. Now, everything that's currently in the early access, everything big at least, has been found. We're about to put out an update very soon, which is you know, we're adding basically like a save and continue functionality, so you can step away from the game and come back to it like a day later to continue your run. That's going to be coming out sometime pretty soon, and we might have a big secret that that is included in that, which I'm very excited for players to find, because it's a little wacky.
So some of the most common things I see when it comes to hype or people talking about your game, whether it's in the Discord or the subreddit, are people talking about lore implications of all the stuff they're finding and all their theories, and how it is bringing the community both together, but it's also kind of riling them up to get them excited for the next thing that's coming. Another studio I know that did that well, or controversially well, would be Destiny 2, where the devs have gone on record and said that by keeping a lot of stuff in lore cards or not distinctly telling players had to form communities and taught themselves, which brought them together in a way that they could never do through the game, almost like a meta element. Is that something that you guys also intentionally utilize, or is that something that's just organically been driven through the community itself?
I mean, I think I can speak for the rest of us when I say that. Like, yeah, that kind of community building, I think is really only possible if you approach things the way that like we have, or like Destiny did, or whatever, where it's like a lot of people really enjoy that side of it. So yeah, that is something that we want.
Yeah, I particularly enjoyed when like ARGs were a really big thing on YouTube, where it seemed like every other day of the week someone was uploading something weird onto YouTube or Reddit, trying to start another augmented reality game. And the nice thing about doing it this way is like we don't have to actually run an ARG at all. You know, like it's pretty common for ARGs to be used for like marketing material, or like you're trying to solve some big puzzle that may like help tell like some much larger story once it's done. But I think the more successful ones I've seen were for marketing material, and so there's, you know, some money to be put behind it, and there's resources. And in our case, we kind of get the best of both worlds, where we can throw in what we want into the game as we're developing it, and like drop little bits in the Discord or whatever, without having to actually develop an entire ARG at the same time. So we sort of found a way to walk a really nice line with that, where the community gets to feel like they're still participating in this extra part of the game, and we get to make that without it being like the most insane challenge for everybody involved, basically.
So for each of you, what's been your favorite moment of watching your game through the community? Was it someone pulling something off in an insane speed run that you thought, holy fuck, how did he think to do that? Or was it someone just dying in a really stupid ass way?
I know personally the first time that I saw someone outside of the dev group pop a slug rub, it was perfect. It was exactly what we wanted, and I felt like, oh, okay, my intent can be felt through the game.
Yeah, I can. I certainly do have like a handful of standout moments. I mean, just seeing creators that we've enjoyed online playing it has been really rewarding. Just seeing it get talked about by people whose opinion that we respect already was really cool. I also just kind of like, I'm kind of someone who's just into like people watching in general, and just kind of happening to catch someone doing something like odd in public when they think no one is looking or whatever is kind of a some weird, like, I don't want to call it hobby, but just I like to just stare out at groups of people and just see what they do. And White Knuckle has kind of afforded me like the greatest example of that ever, where I can lurk in a community or watch a stream or just a video of someone playing the game, and kind of see like what reactions we've elicited from what we've done, and just watching people talk about the game candidly, just something that we made, has been really rewarding in of itself. But also, I will just steal Quinn's answer in that watching someone pop a grub for the first time, having no clue what was going to happen, and no one in their chat knowing what was going to happen when they were playing this on Twitch, is like the highlight of like the last like year of my life, probably.
Yeah, I agree with the grub popping, because like we knew, because like we designed it and we're like, we'll make it the cutest possible thing, and it'll be very funny when someone clicks, because they'll think they're gonna like pet it or something, and they do the exact opposite, the polar opposite of petting the grub. So that's for sure. I think, like as they said, like absolute highlight of the last, I don't know, couple years of my life, and I got married last year, so a pretty big moment. I'd say more broadly than that, or like separately from that, something that was really, really amazing to see in the early days when we put it out was people starting to like speedrun the game. And it wasn't just like one guy. It was like, no, there's a lot of people that were really interested in just like learning all of the tech, and they make like, they make a document with like all of these different possible moves that the player can do and all of these like fancy things, and then they're discovering stuff, and just seeing the community build around that side of the game was really heartening. It gave me so much energy early on, and that energy is like still carrying me forwards as the community has continued to grow.
I think, speaking for all of us too, the memes that our community has made about the game,
memes.
especially
My God, the memes.
Maybe in the first like 2 or 3 weeks of the game debuting in the Indie Horror Showcase and the demo being made available, we got some memes that were specific to the game. It's the hardest I've laughed like in years and years, was some of the stuff made specifically about White Knuckle. And I felt that was a really good sign early on that, like, people know that we might have like a more serious subject here or there in some parts, and the game is meant to be scary and foreboding in a lot of ways, but having the community also be able to like poke fun at it or extrapolate something funny out of a serious moment in the game, I think added a lot of value that I was hoping that they would get to. I wasn't sure how they were going to, but the fact that they reached that conclusion on their own was just really, really satisfying to see. And yeah, it's made me laugh. You know, some of the hardest I've laughed in my life has been
I would
just
say, like,
in the last few months.
all of the stuff our community has created, like the fan art too, is like amazing. There's just so much phenomenal stuff from, and it's so surreal seeing people make anything relating to like at this scale relating to a project that like we've done. I think so it's just so wonderful.
And a shout out to the Red Finger parody game also that got made for a game jam. That's absolutely incredible, and it's that was a.
We're still a demo. We were still a demo, Jack.
Yeah, yeah. Like that's a game. Like I watched people play it online, and all I could think to myself is like, why didn't we think of that? That's such a good idea. Why didn't we do that?
So funny.
Yeah, no, we've seeing that, especially like the fact that there was a parody game at all, was pretty incredible. There's also, I think there's like a project to like try to recreate the climbing mechanics in Gary's mod right now that we just saw like yesterday. So
crazy.
Good luck to whoever's working on that one. Best of luck to you.
Yeah,
I don't envy that task at all.
It's wild. It's just what's wonderful. It's nothing any of us have ever experienced, I think.
When I watch speedrunners, they tend to play games differently from how most people play, so I'm always interested to watch how I'm playing versus a speedrunner. And so I went and Googled a clip, and this dude had an inventory full of grubs. And I'm thinking, oh shit, is there like an alternate ending if you take more grubs? And I just watched him pop one. And I went, oh no! And I went in the comments immediately. Like I paused, scrolled down, and all the comments are everyone going, oh no, that's what the grubs were for.
Oh my god! Now I'm desperate to know. I've got to see that speed run. There's so many different styles of speed running too. It's that sort of stuff is so funny.
So I guess my final question would just be, I think one of the things that caught my attention the most is just White Knuckle is the most brilliant name for a game I've ever seen. Both because of the expression white knuckle being something you're afraid to do, but your knuckles get white when you're climbing, and then the art style is white knuckles, and that's also the only way your character communicates is through his hands. Who came up with that idea for a name?
Jack.
Yeah, that was me. Yeah. I'm gonna take full credit for that one. This is
full credit for that one.
Yeah, this is a rule that I've like tried to force on Holly for like years now, since we've been making games. Where I'm like, and this was also kind of before Iron Lung was a thing, but my joke rule has always been like, we need to have a name as good as Iron Lung, because that one just is kind of perfect. It's a good mix of like feeling a little esoteric and moody, but it's also like aesthetically describing the game in a way while not at the same time. And I remember like we had to do a short list, like each of us like proposed a short list of names, and the quick story behind this is I looked out for, like phrases like white knuckle, stuff like that. But part of it was also like how easy is it to like Google relative to, like, if I just Googled white knuckle, I get like a 5-Finger Death Punch song, which whatever, and a bunch of other like just like not dictionary.com, but like stuff like that, like just definitions for that term, and that was it. And so I went, okay, that one's open. I think some of the other ones I threw out, I had pipe organ, because initially I thought the game was going to be just the silos, and I was like, that's a totally not just ripping off Iron Lung for for a name. Copy my homework without making it look like you copied it.
We had a bunch of names. Some of them were not good. Most of the not good ones are mine. And then I think it was like White Knuckle was kind of like one of the later editions where it was like we had a bunch of names and we're like shopping around, and then Jack just came in and was like, "Here's a name, White Knuckle," and we're like, "Fuck, that's really good, actually."
Yeah, I threw out White Knuckle, Death Grip, and Pipe Organ, and we didn't do Death Grip because we were initially looking at releasing on itch.io at the time too, and the rap outfit Death Grips also uploads their albums to Itch, and it was like, well, we're just gonna get buried under them. Like, if you Google the term Death Grip, we're gonna get buried by Death Grips, so we shouldn't use that name. Oh yeah,
White
and that was also like
the better name though, because it's like
yeah.
The real benefit of the name is that like white knuckle is a term that everybody knows, like everybody understands what white knuckle means, but it's also like pretty uncommon. You know, like no one, it's rare for someone to say like, oh, I'm gonna, you know, white knuckle this or whatever. Like it's something that is like people know, but it's just uncommon enough that we were able to slip on in there, and yeah.
Yeah, by all of the remaining luck that I have in my time as a living thing on this planet, I burnt it all on on coming up with this game's name. So I'm glad everyone likes that name. Yeah, this is where I peak in my life, is naming White Knuckle, basically.
Alrighty, I think that covers everything I really have time for. So I guess the final part is there anything you all would like to shout out while I have you all here? Any like individual links to your social medias, or I had one gentleman shout out a local pizza place.
Oh hell yeah! I'll shout out two things. I'll shout out my Bluesky. It's jonka.bluesky.social. It's JONKA. You can follow me there. And locally, I would love to shout out the. You know, actually, maybe I should not say this. What am I doing? Cut this out.
Yeah, maybe don't dox yourself in a podcast, Holly.
Okay, well, what I'm gonna say is I'm gonna shout out New York Deli Southside. They're wonderful. They have some great breakfast options, great Blackstone Benedict. Go check them out in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
All right, maybe I'll just bleep that section if you want me to in the post.
Yeah. bleep the part where
We'll move on. Next recommendation.
I want to recommend everyone go watch the Povcats video on White Knuckle. He is
double that recommend.
This is my favorite YouTuber, and that he made a YouTube video about my game was I shat myself. I was so excited. Amazing. Yeah, that's my recommendation.
I'd like to shout out probably the Power Pack video also. That was a really fun one to see early on. Power Pack did the myhouse.wad video that's been very popular on YouTube for the last like year or two now. So getting any amount of coverage from that guy at all was super special.
It's just nuts to see like videos from people that like we watch.
Yeah.
It's very weird. Anyways, continue.
Yeah, I also my Bluesky is diplodocus03.bsky.social. DIPLODOCUS03. Follow me if you want to on that. I barely post on it, and it's usually just me retweeting links to our own stuff anyway. I might post about a Gundam in there every once in a while because I'm a plastic model nerd. Yeah, and I've got my other links in there too. Check out our Discord also if you want. We just hit 5,000 members literally this morning. You can find that at hang on, let me double check this URL still works. You can type in fastdeathstranding.com and that will take you to the invite page for our Discord.
You can also find the link on whiteknuckle.net.
Oh yeah, that's probably an easier one, but fastdeathstranding.com.
Yours is funnier. Yours is funnier.
That one's pretty sweet. So yeah, we got those. I don't know, play White Knuckle. Let us know what you think about it.
Play Rain World.
All right.
Play Project Wingman.
If y'all want to send me all those links, all 27, I will happily put them down below.
Yeah.
And I think with that, it about covers everything. So thank you for watching. This show can be found on, I almost said Bluesky and Twitter. That's not where I'm from. On YouTube, Podbean, and Spotify. I do have I am on Twitter and Bluesky, and that can be found in my linktree, which also could take you to my Ko-Fi, where any donation would be appreciated. And with that, I think that about covers everything. So until next time, bye!
See y'all!
Bye, everybody.
What? Bye.